Public Library. And it's my pleasure to join with you in a conversation about the first woman, the first Black, and the first Asian American Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. We have a great source with us today to lead the way, longtime California political journalist Dan Morain, whose timely and revelatory book, Kamala's Way, is due out next month. No, actually in January. So we'll all keep a lookout for that. It's due out in paperback. Dan covered California state politics and policy for more than 4 decades, including 27 years at the LA Times and 8 years, I believe, as editorial page editor of the Sacramento Bee. So he knows his way around the territory. Welcome, Dan.
Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. So just a quick note before we begin. Please feel free, everyone, to join in with your comments and questions along the way by clicking on the chat button at the bottom of your screen. We will keep an eye out for your questions. Okay, so we'll get started. Dan, I'm very drawn to the title of your book, Kamala's Way. What exactly is her way? And I believe this is a 2-part question. How did she make her way to the vice presidency? And what is her way of behaving in the world? So let's start with the first part. What's her origin story? Who were her parents and how did they impact her?
Sure. Well, you know, Kamala's Way's kind of got 2 meanings. One is her path, how she got from being born in Oakland in 1964 to parents, mother from India and father from Jamaica, both students at UC Berkeley, graduate students. And the other meaning is sort of her style. Her origin story is she grew up the daughter of Shyamala Gopalan and Donald Harris. Donald was studying to be an economist at UC Berkeley. He got his PhD there. Shyamala was studying to be a scientist. She became a breast cancer researcher of some note, some significant note, actually. And they had 2 daughters. Kamala's the oldest. Maya is her younger sister by 2 years. Her parents split when they were young girls. I think the divorce was final in 1972. Donald Harris did have joint custody under California law, but they really were their mother's daughter. In a very real way, Shyamala was just so impactful. I mean, all mothers are, but to this day, Kamala Harris still talks about her mother in reverential tones. She really was Kamala Harris's heroine. And you think about this woman, she was 19 when she graduated from college in India. 1959, she comes halfway around the world to Berkeley, a place she had never been. Imagine the determination it must have taken in 1959 to make her way to Berkeley, to request that her father allow her to go. This is a time of arranged marriages in India. There she's studying, she meets Donald, who was giving a talk, and as he said in the New York Times some time back, the rest is history. When they split, he did see her. He did see his children. He writes about taking them to Jamaica so they could see from whence he came. Kamala Harris also traveled to India to meet Shyamala's family there. So she really becomes truly multicultural. which I think plays out in her time as an adult, we see it, I see it in so many ways. Her trip to France, speaks French because Shamala brought her to, Shamala got passed over for a job at UC Berkeley, and rather than sit around in Bruges, she got a job at McGill, no small feat, up in Quebec, and there Kamala learned French, not very well, but learned enough. So she becomes really a pretty worldly kid, which I think matters to this day.
Yeah. What was California like when she was growing up?
Mm-hmm. So she was here from 64 to age 12, so about 1976. And so this is Berkeley in the late 60s, the a center, maybe the center of the anti-war movement, a center, maybe the center for the environmental movement, criminal justice reform. The next town to the north of Berkeley is Oakland. That's where the Black Panthers were founded. It became a center for civil rights, and the Grateful Dead and the whole sort of counterculture thing that was happening in San Francisco in the middle to late 60s. Of course, she was a baby, so she does write in her autobiography about being brought to demonstrations while in a stroller. I don't remember my time in a stroller, but I guess maybe she does remember pieces of this. And then in the 1970s, I mean, it's a time of great foment. She's all part of this. Certainly her parents are, they're not leaders, particularly in the civil rights movement, but they are participants, like so many people in the Bay Area and Berkeley were. So.
And I'm curious why her mother, you talk about in the book, equipped her to see herself as a Black woman in America. And why that choice?
Well, so I never met Shamala. I know many people who did know her. And I know what Kamala Harris has written. I should say at the outset that I wrote this book in September, October, November of 2020. She was busy at that time. They did not help. She did not help with this book. Her campaign people did not help with this book. So it's based on interviews with people who are and were around her. But from what I understand, Shamala understood that in the United States, being Black included her daughters. And so it became important for her to make sure they were grounded in the civil rights movement, that they understood what it means to be Black in America. It's one of the, I'm pretty sure it's one of the reasons Kamala Harris chose to go to Howard University. I mean, this was an 18-year-old kid who I'm sure could have gone to many different universities and chose to go to Howard because she could be more like who she is there. It was an important formative place for her. I mean, college is always formative, but going to Howard was really something that she talks about all the time, and clearly it has helped in her political life. There's a network of people who were there when she was there, and before she was there, and after she was there, who are very supportive of Howard alumni, and she is very supportive of them. She's very supportive of Howard University. It matters to her that that's where she went.
Could you trace for us her political trajectory? Like, what was her first foray into that world?
So she made a clearly very political decision to go to become a prosecutor. She went to UC Hastings, which, by the way, is changing its name because, as it happens, Hastings was not had orchestrated killings of Native Americans in California. At any rate, she went to UC Hastings, the oldest law school in California, and she decided, rather than become a civil rights attorney, rather than become a public defender, that she would become that she would become a prosecutor. That was a political decision in part, and one that surprised her family, surprised her sister, her parents. But she saw it as a way to affect change from within. That's certainly what she has said. You know, one of the facts I learned in the course of doing the reporting for this book was that in 1992, so she's a young deputy district attorney in Alameda County, pretty tough time at that county to work in back then. High homicide rate, drug problems, tough place. She becomes election night 1992. She gets in her old Toyota Corolla, drives across the Bay Bridge, goes to San Francisco, and there she is at the Fairmont Hotel, where Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer are celebrating their victories to the U.S. Senate. That's the night Bill Clinton is elected. So she's clearly thinking about politics at that time. It's something she's given some thought to. Now, you know, when she decided that she was going to start running for office, I'm not 100% sure, but clearly by the year 2000, she is deciding that she has set her sights. She's moved over to the district attorney's office in San Francisco, and then she had a falling out with the then district attorney, Terrence Hallinan, and she decides to run against him. She makes that decision in about 2000. The campaign is in 2003. That's when Hallinan is up for re-election. And you know, she's very determined. She raises an incredible amount of money in a very short period of time. She announces her candidacy in November of 2002. By December, she's raised in excess of $100,000. So she's put herself on the map. You know, keep in mind, San Francisco is a city of, you know, 700,000, I think, at the time. So $100,000 mattered. It put her on the map. She won that race, becoming the first woman of color to hold that office. One of the ways that she campaigned, pretty interesting, I think, that she goes to the San Francisco Public Library and she gets photos of all the district attorneys who had come before her, and puts them on a brochure. And you know, clearly she's different. All the others before her are white men. She's not. Sets her apart. She wins as the law and order candidate. Of course, she's a liberal. Everybody knew she was a liberal. Opposed the death penalty, made clear in her campaign that she would never seek the death penalty, no matter the crime. But she ran to the right in some sense of Terrence Hallinan, who was way to the left. And so that's where she got her electoral start. I got to know her in 2007, 2008. She's district attorney in San Francisco. I was covering the presidential campaign for the LA Times, and she was the main surrogate for this state senator from the south side of Chicago. By then a US senator. And she was the main surrogate for candidate Obama in Northern California, which is where I was based. She was really the first elected official to come out in support of him. And she, worked really hard to help him get elected. She was in Des Moines in that miserably cold winter of 2007-8. I was there too. I saw her and bundled up, doing work on behalf of Obama. In fact, on the night he won the caucus, she and I stood, she probably didn't remember, but I remember standing not very far from where she was standing, watching Obama give his victory speech. Right after that is when she announced her candidacy for California Attorney General. And then she ran, very tough race in the general, almost didn't win, squeaked it out, by far the closest of the statewide campaigns in 2010. And then she's off. It's a very interesting race. If you want to talk more about that, I certainly can.
Sure, I'd love to hear a little bit how she's, as a campaigner, I think it brings us back to Kamala's way. What is her way of presenting herself to the world? What is she like as a politician?
Yeah. So it's, the 2010 campaign was really interesting, and it foreshadows some of what we saw in 2020 and beyond. 2010 was the year of the Tea Party. Remember, it was a year when the Democrats got shellacked, as President Obama said, in Congress all around the country. The Tea Party wave, though, really stopped at the east side of the Sierra. And California Democrats won all statewide offices, including California Attorney General. But, if you look at that the primary, especially on the Republican side, the Tea Party candidate was a guy named John C. Eastman. Now, your folks may recognize that name. He's the one who wrote the memo urging that Mike Pence, Vice President Pence, delay the counting of the Electoral College votes on January 6th. Eastman has become quite prominent. He ran a very interesting campaign, and in no small way is I think responsible for helping Kamala Harris win Attorney General. His attack on the Republican frontrunner, the LA County District Attorney Steve Cooley, became her attack in the general election. Eastman raised the issue of Steve Cooley's pension. He was going to get a pension. He'd been a career prosecutor in Los Angeles County. He was going to get a pension, and he was going to get pay as Attorney General. And so Eastman raised this issue of double dipping. It was a big issue in 2010. We're in the middle of California is certainly still coming out of the financial crisis of 2008, mortgage meltdown, and municipalities are going bankrupt in part because of pensions. So it was a big issue. Eastman attacked Cooley over that. Now, Eastman ended up getting about 37% of the vote. Cooley beat him rather handily ultimately. But then in the general election, Harris brought that up, brought up a clip of Cooley answering a question from a debate in which he said he was going to take the pension. He had earned it by God, and he was going to take it. Well, he came off as pretty arrogant and dismissive of the question asked by a LA Times guy by the name of Jack Leonard. And that became the clip that Harris ran over and over, helped her win that election although it wasn't apparent on election night. In fact, Cooley was so confident that he declared victory. The San Francisco Chronicle ran an online headline saying that Cooley had beaten Harris. So it was very close, but then the late votes came in from Alameda County and other Democratic strongholds, and she ended up winning.
So did that embolden her to, in the first debate, come out swinging against Biden? And that wasn't quite as successful.
No, that wasn't so successful, was it? Well, it was successful for about a minute. It got her a lot of attention initially when she basically told Biden, "I don't believe you're a racist, but you did oppose busing here." And she talked about her experience as a little girl in Berkeley and busing. Well, she's a very good debater. You don't spend most of your adult life as a courtroom prosecutor and not be pretty good on your feet and know how to land a punch. She spent a lot of time putting people in prison for long periods of time for their bad acts. So she knows how to question people, knows how to cross-examine people. You can found any number of former staffers who can attest to that. So yeah, she was tough, and she was running to win. I mean, she was not running to be vice president. She was running to be the Democratic nominee, and she believed that if she became the nominee, she could have won. She went into the primary understanding that she had, maybe a 10% chance of becoming the nominee. Lots of people run for president. Very few of them become president. Very few of them become their party's nominee. So she knew that it was a long shot, but she also saw a path. She saw a path to become the nominee, and she saw a path to beat Trump, and that's why she was running, and that's why she threw what she thought was going to be a punch. She knew it was going to be a punch. She knew it was going to hurt Biden, and it did for a minute.
And then the next minute, it kind of derailed her candidacy.
Well, that and other things. It was not, there were, it was not a very good campaign. She had her moments. That was one. She had a few other moments, but running for president is hard, and she waffled on a few important questions, not the least of which was Medicare for all. It was an uneven campaign at best. She did the right thing by pulling out early before the votes got cast. If she had stayed in much longer, she would have been on the California ballot in March of 2020, and she would have gotten creamed, and that would have made it very difficult for her to maintain any kind of political career. So she got out. She got out before the Iowa caucus, but I think it was really important for her. She knew that she wasn't going to do well in California to pull out when she did.
So despite that punch she threw, he chose her to be his VP. And what did she do behind the scenes to land the spot?
Well, when she pulled out, what she did was spend a couple weeks, she disappeared for a couple of weeks. When she got back to Washington in January, she went about being a United States senator. I mean, she did what senators do. She introduced bills because she was a Democrat. Mitch McConnell was the leader. None of those bills went anywhere. But she tended to her business. There's a debate about the significance of this, but in July, California's lieutenant governor, Eleni Kounalakis, organized a phone call to the Biden headquarters in Delaware. A bunch of California Democrats were on the call: former Governor Gray Davis, former Stockton Mayor Michael Tubbs, Long Beach Mayor Robert Garcia, other people. And they spent time explaining to the Biden people what Harris's significance was. There was some question as to whether her support in California had waned. Karen Bass, Congresswoman from LA, was in the running to be vice president, Biden's pick. And so this was a call that was meant to make clear that Harris had her supporters in California. I believe that call mattered, so Biden, for a variety of very good reasons, chose Kamala Harris. I mean, George Floyd has been murdered. He had already, Vice President Biden had already said he was going to choose a woman. So that narrowed the field by half. And then George Floyd happened, and it became apparent that he was going to pick a woman of color. And there just aren't that many who have run a statewide campaign, who have run a national campaign. I mean, she was it. It made, in my view, a great deal of sense that he would choose her. Susan Rice was in the running. She had never run for office. Karen Bass was in the running. And although a very skilled politician, I saw her as speaker in California and a really decent human being, she had never run statewide. Stacey Abrams was out of office. So it really did come down to Kamala Harris. And, politics are politics, and people throw elbows, and Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden obviously got over the hurt from the campaign and chose her.
Do you think her presence on the ticket made the difference for him?
No, I think his presence on the ticket made the difference for him. I don't think people vote on vice president, but I do think that given his age and her youth, that it makes people paid attention to who she was. I mean, certainly there was a fundraising boost when she got on the ticket. She brought energy and enthusiasm to the ticket. She is a very good campaigner. People discount her. People underestimate this woman. It's not a good thing to do if you're running against her. She can be very engaging, and so clearly she brought energy, and people understand that Biden is on in years, and so it does matter who the vice president's going to be. That said, people voted for Biden. I think people voted against Trump, and they voted for Biden.
So I just wanted to get you to sort of talk a little bit about those qualities again. What makes her a good retail politician? What are her strengths?
Well, I've seen her give speeches. I've seen her in debate. I, was one of the questioners at her 2010 debate with Steve Cooley, where she, she won that debate. She can be very good. She understands when you should just be quiet and let the other person kind of, melt in their own words. She can light up a room. She can be very engaging. She's, it's kind of funny, I think. I mean, funny, not in a funny way, how people ridicule her over her laugh. Did the same thing with Hillary Clinton. I don't remember anybody ever saying anything about Dick Cheney's laugh or Al Gore's laugh or Mike Pence's laugh. So I think it's pretty sexist, but at any rate, people criticize her for her laugh. Well, I've seen that laugh in many different contexts. And I've seen it in where she can be, where she engages with the room and can be just quite, well, you can see that she can hold the room. Not always, she's not Barack Obama, she's not Bill Clinton in a room, but she's pretty good. So, that's among her ways. She's really smart. She is, well, I've said charismatic. I believe she is charismatic. She's very tough. There are a lot of, there are former Harris staffers who are former for reasons. She has gone through staff. She also understands politics in a very basic way. I mean, she, headlines this past week or last week, whatever it was, about how progressives are disappointed in Kamala Harris. She is very liberal, on women's health, women's reproductive health, on civil rights, on same-sex marriage, on all the sort of big issues, gun control. She will take the liberal positions on all those, but on other issues, she's gonna take a more nuanced position. She didn't take a stand on legalization of marijuana for a long time. She's a prosecutor. That is in her bones and in her blood. She put people in. She prosecuted a guy who scalped his girlfriend, and tried this. He tried once, and the knife wasn't sharp enough, and he did it a second time, and it worked. Well, that guy's in prison for life. I mean, you don't see that. You don't live through something like that without it having an impact. So she certainly is liberal, and in many, many ways progressive. But in other ways, she ran as the law and order candidate for San Francisco District Attorney back in 2003 for a reason.
So there's been some other headlines lately, one of which is, what is Kamala doing with her time? And another was the incredible disappearing vice president. She's not front and center. We're not seeing, except for in France, most recently, she's receded. Mm-hmm. What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm 3,000 miles away from Washington, so I'm not seeing her every day. But a vice president is a vice president. Joe Biden is the one who's out front, I disagree that she's a disappearing vice president. I think she's a pretty prominent vice president as vice presidents go. But her job is to be his second. Her job is not to be the president. The LA Times has done this, I think, very cool database that is tracking all her appearances, public and private, that get announced by the White House. So it shows that she's having lunch 3 or 4 times a month with President Biden. It shows that she is getting the presidential daily brief on a regular basis. It seems to me those are the 2 most important things. It also shows, and I find this telling, that she's doing things that don't get press attention, but that reflect who she is. So there, I'm sure the people watching this know that Black women, maternal mortality among Black women is far higher than it is among white women. She elevated that issue by holding a round table that where this was the topic of discussion. You know, I don't think Mike Pence or even Al Gore would have chosen that as an issue to highlight. She did that. She spends time highlighting women who are running or aspiring to run small businesses. That I think that matters. She met with the Prime Minister of Barbados. It was a Black woman, and I think it matters who she is. When she gets off Air Force One, nobody else has done that. I mean, I think that our daughters and granddaughters notice that. So while she is not as high profile as President Biden, or certainly not as high profile as Donald Trump, she's out there and she's getting noticed. I mean, there's a lot. I spent a lot of time reading about her, and I note that the ethnic press spends a lot of time writing about her. She gets a lot of attention in publications that are aimed at people from India who are living in the United States. So stuff that flies under the mainstream press radar. I think she's out there more than perhaps the New York Times, Washington Post, or LA Times note. Although I should say the LA Times has this really cool database, which is on its website. You can see what she's doing.
Right. I mean, the portfolio that is more publicized in the mainstream press is immigration and voting rights, and those are two very difficult to go down. And
yeah. Well, I find the voting rights issue really interesting. I mean, both are really interesting. Voting rights first, though, is, I'm not sure her job is to whip votes in the Senate. I think that's up to Majority Leader Schumer and probably President Biden. She has relationships in the Senate, but her friends are going to be for that whatever voting rights bill emerges in 2022. But one of the things that I've noticed that she does is spend a lot of time in Texas and Georgia and meeting with people in those states or from those states. And that has the effect of I think, building alliances that could be helpful in, I think, 8 years or 7 years. I don't think it's going to be 4 years or 3 years when she runs again, or when she runs for president, because I do think Biden's going to run for re-election, his health permitting. So I think her position on as the administration's point person on voting rights matters more in the states than it does in Washington. On immigration, I think that's a really interesting and important issue for her to be involved in. She is a Californian. She spent a lot of time on the border, dealing with border-related issues. She was, she as California Attorney General, she focused on transnational gangs. She focused on human trafficking. She focused on refugees. One of the things that she did as California Attorney General, Jerry Brown, then the governor, took the lead on it, of course, was to secure $3 million to help nonprofits defend the interest of migrants, refugees who were seeking asylum in California during the Obama administration. There was, this is an ongoing issue. As you know, the immigration is an issue that no president has solved. I mean, reading about President Eisenhower and, quote, Operation Wetback. I mean, oh my God, we've come a distance, but immigration from South and Central America and from Mexico is an unending issue. If she can have an impact, that will matter. And if it continues as it is now, I mean, certainly that will be damaging for Biden when he runs for re-election in 2024. But it won't be as if she's the only one who hasn't solved immigration issues in the United States. So,
how do Republicans see her? She certainly endured a lot of trolling on social media and nasty.
Yeah. Well, I go back to the 2010, her 2010 race for California Attorney General. Leading Republicans understood in 2010 that Kamala Harris was a rising star, that if she won as California Attorney General, she would ascend, that it would be a stepping stone. And initially she wanted to run for governor. The US Senate seat came open, so she ran for that. But in 2010, at the end of the campaign committee, then chaired by Ed Gillespie, who went on to was prominent at the time, went on to other prominent positions, including running for Virginia governor, put in excess of $1 million into an ad attacking Kamala Harris over a death penalty case. They understood that if she won that race, that she would be ascendant. Steve Cooley, the guy who lost that race, told me that his campaign consultant said, this race is really not about California Attorney General, it's about the vice presidency. How prescient was that? I should say the consultant doesn't exactly remember it, but Cooley does, and he's got a pretty good memory, I think. So without a doubt, Republicans saw her as somebody who they would have to contend with, and that's why they wanted to beat her in 2010. They didn't do that. There was no candidate to speak of when she ran for re-election in 2014. She won easily. Republicans, California has a top two primary system, so the top two vote getters, regardless of party affiliation, run against one another. The Republicans didn't even make it into the runoff, so she defeated a Democrat who, I should say, got support from several Republicans, Democratic former member of Congress, Loretta Sanchez. Darrell Issa, among others, endorsed Loretta Sanchez over Kamala Harris. Now, when you look at the question of whether Kamala Harris is going to run, of course she's going to run when the opportunity presents itself, assuming all things being equal. She of course she'll run. But you look at what people are saying about her. I mean, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Tucker Carlson, they routinely go after her. Candidates, there's a fellow running for US Senate down in North Carolina, talks about the Harris-Biden administration. There's a candidate running for US Senate in, is it Alabama or Arkansas? I think it's Alabama, who talks about Kamala, the Kamala Harris agenda and how that's threatening to everything American. So it's kind of, folks are out there from the right going after her, and that, one of the reasons is I think they understand that she's a impactful politician, and while she may not win, she is, you know, certainly as vice president has to be considered the front runner for the nomination when that nomination comes up. It's not going to be a cakewalk to get the nomination. I don't believe, you know, Democrats don't coronate people. There will be serious competition for that, but she's got to be considered a top tier candidate, to be sure.
Though her first campaign never caught fire, you think this next one would be different and that she would stand a reasonable chance?
Yeah, well, you know, lots of presidents run for and nominees run for the nominations more than once. Joe Biden being a prime example of that. Donald Trump being another example. I mean, you know, he played with going for the nomination in past years. You know, Obama's ascent was unusual in that he had never run nationwide before. John McCain had run before. So it is the case that people run more than once before they win. Ronald Reagan had run multiple times. Many people run and never get the nomination. So yeah, I mean, you know, can she win? It's a whole other question. You know, part of that, I mean, it depends so much on whether the Biden-Harris administration is successful. Right now, they've sunk in the polls. She certainly has sunk in some polls, although you know, I guess I'd wait to see more polling before I concluded that she's toast. It's a long way between now and November of next year, and an even longer time between now and October and November of 2024. So in 2028. So it depends on whether the Biden administration is successful. You know, demographics in the country are changing. They're changing in a way that could help a candidate such as Harris, but not necessarily. You know, I mean, Republicans certainly are not ceding votes of Latinos who might be supportive of her. You know, it is to be determined, but I think she certainly could get the nomination. And if she gets the nomination, well, she's got a 50-50 chance of winning.
Right. We have a question from the audience. How many times and how many hours did you interview Kamala Harris? Which was really one of my questions too.
Yeah.
You know, did you see her over the years directly?
Yeah. So she didn't help with the book. I didn't interview her a single time. I didn't, you know, I tried, obviously. I sent questions to her. You know, journalists get told no all the time. You know, I take no for an answer, but then I keep asking. So I asked multiple times, and I sent emails asking about different things, different aspects that I wanted answers to, and it was crickets. So they just did not help. You know, I tried to talk to her father, didn't reach him. I know Doug Emhoff a little bit, her husband, the second gentleman, he did not help. So none of them helped. Now, you know, when she was San Francisco DA and when she was California Attorney General, I talked to her, you know, multiple times. Certainly when she was Attorney General, I was first editorial writer and columnist for the Sacramento Bee. And so I talked to her multiple times then, and then became editorial page editor. When she was running for US Senate in 2016, she came by. She came by for our endorsements multiple times when she ran for AG, Attorney General in 2010, and then again in 2014, and then when she ran for US Senate in 2016. So so she came to the editorial boards. Those are an hour-long event, and we ask every question we can think of, and she answered them all. She was, really good, really quick on her feet. We did not endorse her, I should say. In 2010, we endorsed Steve Cooley, and I took the lead writing that editorial. But it wasn't that we thought she was unqualified. It wasn't that we didn't like her, thought she'd be a good attorney general. We thought Cooley had more experience than she did, which is true, and would have been more focused on being attorney general. It was apparent she was running for something else. So, so how many hours? I had lunch with her once. She may or may not remember that. And, I went to some of her press conferences, not all of them, but, I spent a fair amount of time talking with her. I know people around her much better than I know her. There are different kinds of journalists. There are journalists who want to be an insider, who want to, who seek to be an insider. I tried never to be that journalist when I was at the LA Times in Sacramento Bee. I prefer not to know people I write about all that well, in their personal life. So I never asked her questions that you would ask as a biographer. I never asked her about her relationship with her father, but I find that so interesting because, as near as I can tell, they don't have much of a relationship. I never thought to ask her when I was interviewing her when she came to the editorial board, you were a young attorney in 1991 in Alameda County, and you must have been paying attention to those hearings going on in 1991, Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill. What do you think about this? Never had a chance to ask her that. Never thought to ask her that when she was in office or running for office, but I would love to know the answer to that question, what she thought of the Clarence Thomas hearings, and then Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Joe Biden, what she thought of that. I do know that she holds the seat that Barbara Boxer won, in no small part because Barbara Boxer, then a member of Congress, marched over to the Senate to try to get them to pay attention to what Anita Hill was saying. That served Barbara Boxer reasonably well when she ran for U.S. Senate and won that seat in 1992. And that was the year again where Kamala Harris goes over to the Fairmont and watches these two women, unique in U.S. history, as the new U.S. senators from the largest state in the union. So she understands her place in history. Her story is yet to be written. It's going to go on for what I have sought to do in Kamala's way is to write a book that is a fair, honest assessment of who she was leading up to her time as the first woman of color to be vice president of the United States. I didn't set out to write a hatchet job, which I certainly did not, and I didn't set out to write a puff piece. What I set out to do was to provide a journalist's eye view of who this woman was as she ascended in California politics. And so that's that's what the book is. I don't presume to know much about the presidential campaign. I've been on a campaign trail before. I know how grueling it is, how hard it is. I didn't do that in 2020. It really is a book about Kamala Harris and the California that she grew up in, that sent her to this national stage.
Dan, thank you so much. That was just a wonderful, conversation, and I'm having a bit of a
Don't you hate that when that happens? So
Yes, I do.
yes.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Well, it's been such a pleasure, and like we were saying beforehand, I've been to your part of the world. My parents both grew up in Yonkers. I had an aunt who my sister and I quite loved, who lived in Scarsdale and spent more than one summer there. It's a wonderful part of the country. And I hear you have a great library there too.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yeah. So thank you very much. And thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you.